So some of the most powerful enhancers of our health, our well-being, our energy, and our mind happen to be, obviously, first of all, the food that we eat, understanding what a truly balanced and nutrient-rich diet actually is, but also the extreme power of herbalism and herbal remedies. Obviously, I'm a very huge supporter of herbs, but also amino acids, vitamins, minerals, and other compounds. But there's a huge reason for this. Essentially, in addition to philosophy and nutrition, psychology, herbalism's changed my life. I cannot begin to explain the significant impact that herbs such as holy basil, yerba mate, ashwagandha, recently gotu kola, that all these herbs have had on my life. These things have changed me. And honestly, when looking back at everything and reflecting, I can honestly say that if it was not for tonic herbs such as holy basil and ashwagandha, those are the first ones, I probably wouldn't have evolved as much as I have over the last years. If you look specifically at my videos in early 2014, which are a bit laughable, my videos from early 2014, and you compare them to the videos I was making in December of that last year, that is a transformation of three things, believe it or not. The first one is I was experimenting with different diets. Through trial and error, I was looking for different diets, and the nutrition I was following at that time was somewhere along the lines of raw veganism with a little bit of animal protein mixed in there. You could say it was like the traditional Chinese diet, where I'm eating primarily vegan, but I'm supplementing with little bits of animal protein as a condiment. And then the second thing was herbs. I was starting to supplement with herbs around that time. Around that time, I was supplementing with, I believe, holy basil. I was using goji berry. I was really into Chinese medicine, and I was really into Jing tonics and enhancing. I haven't said what do you call it in a long time. That's a very strange way of recollecting your thoughts. And people are like, what do you call it? What do you call it? Anyway, around that time, I was very fascinated with enhancing the three treasures, Jing, Qi, and Shen. And I was using tonic herbs such as goji berry and holy basil to achieve that. And that really catapulted my mind. It relaxed me on a whole nother level and put me in a state of ease and flow that allowed me to do the proper reflection, meditation, and healing that was necessary for me to evolve past my problems that led me towards health and healing in the first place. The third thing was philosophy, and specifically metaphysics. And believe it or not, I mean, a lot of people obviously look at this subject with skepticism and with great reasoning. Obviously, I don't blame you not believing in this one thing that helped me a lot. But think what you will, astrology, I mean Western astrology essentially, and not just looking at, oh, I'm a Gemini, I'm a Virgo, I'm this, no, that's watered down horseshit. But the actual science and study of astrology dating back to centuries, thousands of years, where you take a look at your sun sign, your moon sign, your Mercury sign, your rising sun sign, or your ascendant sign, what planets are in Mars, what planets are in Venus and Saturn, and your entire birth chart. You have something like 24 different astrological signs, and they all have very specific interpretations on how they change you in the world. Now, of course, once again, I can understand if you don't believe in this, and it's not about that. The point here I'm trying to make is using astrology changed the way I see other people, because I wasn't blaming other people for the way they were anymore. I was looking at them for their true uniqueness and understanding that everybody has a different strengths and weaknesses. And I found that the translations of astrology that I was subscribing to, I suppose, cafeastrology.com, basically I would look at my birth chart, I would calculate my entire birth chart and read their interpretations and try to connect the dots. And I would do that for all my friends, all my family, and any girl that I started dating. And crazy enough, I found that 9 times out of 10, these descriptions were extremely accurate. And I have a friend who is very into science, and really frustrated me a little bit at the time because he was like really trying to debunk this whole astrology thing. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to debunk it, but obviously you can't really prove astrology through without a shadow of doubt. I'm sure you could, actually, but it's like religion in a sense. You can't prove or disprove it, so, you know, think of it as you will. But this definitely changed me, and I found it to be extremely accurate. And basically what my skeptic friend said was that the descriptions of each sign is so general that it could be applied to anybody. And if you tell somebody that they're a Taurus when they're really a Gemini, and you have them believe they're a Taurus, all of a sudden they'll believe they're a Taurus, and the interpretation will be accurate in their eyes just because they believe it. It's a placebo effect. However, that's not actually how real accurate astrological birth charts and interpretations actually work. These interpretations are actually very specific, and they go into great detail and narrow facts, essentially narrow specific details about every area of a person's life. So for example, for me, I have Gemini. I'm a Gemini Sun. I'm a Gemini Mercury. And I also have my moon in in Virgo, but my ascendant is in Gemini. So those are 3 main signs. In astrology, the closer the planet is to the Earth, the more significant the sign in that planet is to your life. So Gemini, Sun in Mercury in Gemini, Sun in Gemini, and my ascendant Sun in Gemini, the Sun, Mercury, and the Moon. Those 3 planets, or stars, you could say, are the closest to the Earth, and they play the biggest role. So those 3 or 4 are the ones you want to pay so much attention to. And anyway, so I have 3 Gemini and 1 Virgo, and they're all governed by the planet Mercury, the planet of intellect and communication. Well, anyway, so 3 Geminis, and what are the common traits that people associate with Gemini? Well, actually, especially in real astrology, but just in general, most people who pay even a little bit of attention understand that Gemini is a sign of being scatterbrained, a sign of communication, and a sign of intellect. But scatterbrained, extremely, like social, having, that's the same time I said, what do you call it? But being scatterbrained, being, having great social intelligence, those are the big signs of Gemini. And if you look at my videos and listen to me talk, I ramble on about things, and I tend to go and multi-thread my information. And so that is very, very apparent in my personality. It always has been. Now, can the same personality traits be said for everybody, right? Because that's what my skeptic friend said, that a Pisces or an actual Pisces, you could tell them they're a Gemini and give them the characteristics of a Gemini, and by the placebo effect, they'll either become or believe that they are a Gemini. But let's say you have a Cancer friend, and I have so many Cancer friends. I have one friend who has Sun in Cancer and Moon in Gemini. Cancer and Gemini are two very polar opposites of each other. And this guy, I mean, just actually all Cancers I ran into, to varying degrees. Obviously, your moon sign, your Mercury sign, all these things change the characteristics of your personality, but nothing is more significant than your sun sign. But all my Cancer friends are extremely quiet. They are to themselves. They only hang out with one main person at a time, and they won't actually start hanging out with you more frequently until they lose their main person, and you become their main person. They're very homebodied, very attached to comfort and things like this. Very silent, you could say. The vast majority of Cancers are this way. And so you take a person who's really quiet like that and try to say they're like a Gemini. And the description of a Gemini is not general. It is, like very outspoken, outgoing, extroverted, constantly communicating, talk, scatterbrained, etc. That's the complete opposite of a Cancer. And whether the Cancer knows what a Cancer is all about or not, are they going to be able to associate themselves with the characteristics of a Gemini? They're not. Immediately you try to say that they're a Gemini, they're going to dismiss it right away. They'll be like, well, this can't be true. I don't talk very much. And they probably won't even tell you that because they are a Cancer. They'll probably just nod their heads and be like, oh, interesting. Passive aggressiveness. So that whole skeptical argument it cannot be applied, unfortunately. But somebody who does not study astrology won't be able to understand this. But they'll try to debunk it, and they'll try to disagree with you. They'll try to debunk it. But unfortunately, little arguments like that are irrelevant and just not true. And then beyond that, of course, they try to say like, oh, like the first thing is like they think it's ridiculous that the planets and the stars could have any impact on our personalities and we as human organisms on the planet. I think that's the most ridiculous, like criticism that you could have. And that whole thing I keep saying, where the hell did that come from? That actually is a very mind-numbing phrase. What do you call it? Yeah, what do you call it? I don't know where the fuck that came from. First time I ever used that. But anyway, it doesn't really matter. People try to, these skeptic people try to say that the planets can't have any impact on your life and get real and blah blah blah. Well, it's fucking hilarious to me. So you're saying the planets and the stars don't have any impact on the planet, on us as human organisms. What about the sun? The sun's a gigantic star, larger than all the planets. You could think of it as a star planet, I guess. Planet on fire, whatever, the star. Without the sun, do you think that we would still be living the exact same way that we're living? No, we'll probably die. According to science, the same thing that these skeptics subscribe to. So by the observations of science, without the sun, we'd be fucked. And all of the planets are revolving around the sun. And the fact that we're revolving around the sun means that the planets are basically our planet's brother, essentially. The stars, the entire solar system. I mean, can you imagine what would happen if, like, Pluto blew up, or an asteroid hit Pluto or something? And I've said this to my skeptic friend, and he's like, oh, please, to say that one of the planets would explode or fall out of the sky. Oh please, that's ridiculous. But that's not the point though. That's like avoiding my point. If one of the planets was impacted in a certain way, do you think that that would have an impact on planet Earth? Most likely. Similarly to how something happened to the sun or something happened to the moon, it would change our cardiac rhythms. You say that? Circadian rhythms or sleep and wake cycles, vitamin D, all sorts of things would happen, and that would definitely have an impact on our brain and our mind. And orbiting the sun along with all these other planets, of course, it's going to have an impact on how we are. The entire universe is interconnected. This is just the principle of balance. It's the same thing as understanding that without the bees, our planet would fall apart. Without the proper air, water, the ocean, all these things, all these organisms on the planet, it's all required to sustain life and it's all required to be balanced with to sustain life as well. Once the ecosystem is in balance, the entire chain of events, domino effects, and it's all affected. So by reflecting on the bigger picture, I think that we could see that it's most likely that, astrology isn't as bullshit as people think. It's just that people don't study it enough, and they subscribe to the wrong facets or the wrong branches of astrology. Like people see memes on Facebook, the memes on Facebook, where they give a dumbass basic statement about each sign, like, oh, if you date a Gemini, he's going to kill you, or like, Geminis are beautiful, Aries are baldacious and sexy, and like that's not astrology. That's just some bullshit statements that people wrote down and made into a meme because they need a fucking life, I guess. I don't know. It actually does kind of frustrate me a little bit and triggers me. It's ignorance. Alright? People who believe those memes that's ignorant. I definitely can agree on that. And there's no skepticism there. It's just purely retardation. But true astrology, though, I'm just saying, it's not completely retarded to think, that there's a possibility to understand. There's a huge possibility that astrology does have practical application. First of all, I know that it does. It changed my life, changed my social interactions, made things easier for my relationships, especially with my parents, my family. Helped me understand people and look at people with empathy rather than just think that everyone needs to abide by my own rules and shit. But beyond that, there's actually even science that shows, and I don't remember exactly what study, or I just remember back when I was really into astrology and paying attention to it every day. There's a paper somewhere. I'll have to dig it up and see if I can make a video about it. There's a paper somewhere that shows magnetic poles from other planets to different parts of the Earth. And these magnetic poles influence our ecosystem. I'll have to look to see where that is, and so I could be more specific on this. But there is scientific data to back it up. And I think it should be common sense, really. We look at the larger picture of things. And beyond that, if you check out Cafe Astrology, and I'm not in no way affiliated with them at all, but Cafe Astrology, calculate your birth chart and read the definitions on there, the transcripts or whatever, the descriptions of each planet in your house, and tell me how accurate those can be. Because for some people, very rarely, but there are some birth charts I've calculated that don't really seem to add up to me. But for pretty much everybody that I know, all my family members, my girlfriend, etc., I've calculated their birth chart, and it's been very, 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 very accurate. Okay. But, not everyone's open-minded enough and able to use critical thought and open-mindedness at the same time. A healthy dose of skepticism and not a limiting intelligence. So anyway, that's been my little brain dump there. Astrology has been a big part of my transformation, although I haven't really been paying attention to astrology the last year or so, compared to back in the day, but I probably will start because astrology brings a huge sense of tranquility and well-being to my life. It definitely is worth checking into. Leave your questions and comments down below and tell me your experience with astrology and your opinions on them.